you still only use 10% of your brain.
We don't even know how to define life, let alone knowing how to spark it to begin.
When you look at the human eye, the blood vessels come in the front, but the reason why is because the retina needs so much blood flow.
And now, the Flaming Sword.
Super Swell Joe, are you ready to roll?
I am ready to roll, Darin. And something else that rhymes with all that, where I live, we've got some snow. So Super Swell Joe is ready to roll in the snow or something like that.
First snow of the year?
You know, we had actually some flurries a little bit over the past few days, but this is the first day that it's stuck. We've probably got a couple inches or so, and I love me some snow, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, I'd just soon stay away, but that's neither here nor there. Part of our podcast last week was dealing with, we had three main points, but one of them was that Christian apologists that are on the rise, a lot of them, they believe in theistic evolution.
Right.
And you and I disagree with that. But the good thing is both sides still believe that God created it all. And today you're going to be focusing on the wonders of the human creation, the human body.
Yes, and I'm not only going to be focusing on myself, which was what some people might think of when you say that.
Oh, man. Little apologist is going to nail you on that one.
Yep, indeed.
Joe's a dreamer. He ain't got nothing on me.
But before we get started, of course, you must give us your joke, brother.
A lot of people listening are probably Christians, and we hope that we've got people listening that aren't too, or that might be leaning in a little bit to learn more about the Christian faith. But for people that are a little familiar with the Bible, they know that the Sea of Galilee is kind of legendary for having these storms come up really suddenly, and they could literally be life-threatening. And so I'm going to tell just a little story that some people might not know, but during that same time when Jesus and the apostles were around, there were some other fishermen out on this lake, and they weren't necessarily believers in God. They were just kind of your garden variety fishermen out there. But one day they're out, and this storm comes up just out of nowhere, and these winds are crazy, and the water is swirling, and the main guy with this fishing business, he just, even though he's not the godly man, he kind of freaks out and he realizes this is life-threatening. And so he says, is there anybody here with me that prays or believes in God? And sure enough, one of the guys says, yeah, I do. I believe in God and I'll pray. And so he says, all right, that's great. He goes, you stand up right at the front of the boat and you pray real hard. And the rest of us are going to put on our life jackets and jump off because we're one life jacket short. And some people are still thinking about that, saying, is there more? No, that's it. So,
oh, well, it fits your profile of joke telling.
That's right. I'm rock and rolling today, Darin.
Must have been that snowfall. It's really got you rolling.
I think it was.
Well, back to serious things now. Back to our program, our regular scheduled program.
That's right.
So before you get started, it's kind of a way of intro. I actually have a short clip here. We've talked about him before, Dr. James Chur. It's only about probably a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes tops clip. He's a synthetic organic chemist and a leading nanotechnology expert.
Wow.
Yeah, it's he's a top gun, and in a YouTube video, it's actually an excellent video. I'll link it in our description.
Perfect.
But he was asked this question, so I'm going to read the question and then we'll play the clip. Can scientists build the most basic life forms?
We do not know how to build even a simple bacterium. The simplest bacterium with its 256 protein coding genes, we have no idea how to build it. First of all, we don't know how to build the molecules, the 4 classes of molecules that are needed for it. We don't know how to, even if we had those 4 classes of molecules, assemble them even into the simplest of bacteriums. We don't know how to do that. One can do that with the technologies we have today. We can make technologies, but we can't even make the simplest bacterium. Anybody who would say something contrary does not know what they are talking about. Show me the demonstration. Nobody has ever done it. And it's not because of lack of effort. It's not because of lack of will. First of all, they haven't been able to get the molecules to do this. And if they could make the molecules, even if we were to give them the molecules, they wouldn't have the information. There would be no inherent information in the DNA. But even if we gave them the DNA in the structure that they wanted, they wouldn't know how to put all the components together because of the sophistication within a cell. The interactomes, meaning that the interacting connectivity between the molecules, the van der Waals interactions, all of these have to be in the right place and in the right order for a cell to function. We don't even know how to define life, let alone knowing how to spark it to begin.
James Tour! He tells it like it is.
So what'd you think of that, Joe?
Wow, pretty incredible, right? Here's a guy at the top of his field, and one of the things you've talked about before about him is that you just love his passion for the faith, which I do as well. But what I understand him to be saying at the end of the day is, hey, look, guys, we don't have any idea how to do this, right?
They don't have a clue. He's put out challenges. I think I think I mentioned last time he's had one guy even try, and that was a bust. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So without further ado, you're going to present to us some wonders of the human body. And when you're ready to roll, let her roll, Joe.
All right. Really excited to do this. And one of the things I want to talk about just briefly before I get into this is that apologetics, we've talked about this before, apologetics is really the defense of the Christian faith. And while there are, numbers involved and statistics and mathematics and science and all of these things, and we don't want to minimize that, but sometimes I just like to take a step back and sort of be in awe of what God did. This isn't some academic, dusty thing. This is God who's the first verse of the Bible doesn't say in the beginning God was an engineer. It says he was a creator. And so
absolutely.
I wanted to take that idea and just look at some things I've learned over the years about some things in our body. We're going to look at the brain, the eye, and wait for it, the liver, just for fun. And so the brain is considered to be the most complex structure known to exist on Earth. So that's pretty fantastic. And when I was learning a little bit about the brain a few years ago, more than a few years ago, I guess, when I was growing up in school, one of the things I learned is that we only use about 10% of our brain, and me being having my strange sense of humor, I wondered if that's true, if I only use 10% of my brain, how do I know that I only use 10% of my brain? But the interesting thing is,
you do know that you still only use 10% of your brain.
Maybe on a good, maybe 2% on a good day, right?
I'll digress.
But over the past few years, and as more studying has been done, they found out that other 90% that's not used in ways that we can see as much as actually doing a whole lot as well. And just to give you some amazing things here, we've got about 1 trillion, they're called glial cells, that play a crucial role in the calculations performed by the brain every second. And then we've got neurons, and people have probably heard that word, but we have approximately 100 billion, that's with a B, neurons, connected with more than 50,000 other neurons. And just to make this a little more practical, because I kind of like football and used to enjoy playing a little bit, and I still watch here and there. And just to give you an idea of what our brain can do, if somebody threw a football, and an average throw would be about 30 miles an hour, even if you're standing there without any prior warning, in other words, you didn't even know they were going to throw it towards you, your brain instantly calculates your position and where the ball will end up, and it sends electronic messages to the muscles in your arms and legs. Listen to this, at more than 300 miles a second.
Wow.
To move you into the right place to catch that ball.
Wow.
So, and we just see people doing that or doing other physical things with their body. And even just getting up to walk across the room, we don't think anything of it. But just think this brain is, this 3-pound thing that God has created is sending all these signals. To me, that is just incredible.
That's amazing. The brain is literally the first computer.
Yep.
I think I drew the short straw, though, when it comes to coordination, so I must have less neurons or something.
You said it. Your neurons are running slow, all right. Amen, brother.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the human eye here. And people listening, you'll have to use your imagination a bit on this. When a baby is born, everyone's heard of DNA. So there's this genetic DNA code that basically pre-programs everything about how our bodies will develop and the color of our hair and all those things. But what happens with our eye, and of course the eye is really part of the brain in a sense. And so you've got all these optic nerves, and some of the optic nerves are growing from the eye, the front of the eye, back into the brain, and then other optic nerves are growing from behind the eye in the brain, going basically through to the front of the eye. And you've got 1 million of those optic nerves, and so they're growing from opposite directions, and each one of those optic nerves has to find the correct optic nerve to connect with on the other side.
Crazy. That is amazing.
It is, and I think just to me, just the idea that construction crews could connect a tunnel through a mountain and from just one thing and get that to meet in the middle. It's pretty astonishing.
And they talk about in engineering terms how difficult that is and how precise the math. And the guys who do that are the top dogs. They know what they're doing because that's such a serious feat. And yet within the human body, it does that. It's already designed. It's already in the code to do that perfectly.
Right, 1 million of them. And just think of how small those optic nerves are to have 1 million of them in that space. A couple other things that are amazing about the eye is that our retina is thinner than paper, and yet it contains 137 million light-sensitive cells.
Shoo! It's hard to fathom, isn't it?
It is, and in fact, this is interesting just because we talk about evolution as part of what we do, because it pertains to apologetics. Well, Darwin himself struggled mightily with the eye because he just saw how intricate it was and how complicated all these processes were and how everything needed to work just right. And it was something that he admitted. He said, this is so complicated, it's hard for me to acknowledge that there wasn't a designer behind it.
You just got a phone message. You need to get that.
It was a little pop-up on my computer. It was actually from our millionth listener.
Oh,
a special prize,
right.
and they popped up and said, thank you.
Anything else on the eye? Because I know you got the one I'm really interested in is this liver, because you usually don't hear that as one of the the topics.
No, and I'll tell you, I live or die by that example. See what I did there? Well, we will move on to the liver, and just kind of an interesting way of introducing this is that Moses knew something thousands of years before modern science or doctors were aware of it, and that is that the life is in the blood. That wasn't known till fairly recently, but Moses talked about that all the way back in the book of Leviticus. And so what the liver does is it purifies our bloodstream. And what I didn't know until I read about this a few years ago is that there are actually things that we put in our body, different foods and different things we drink that are poisonous. And the liver essentially says, hey, wait a minute, and it takes all these things and it makes them into minerals and nutrients that are actually good, and it gets rid of the stuff that would be poisonous. If it weren't for our liver in that sense, we could actually die, just from going out to eat somewhere.
Yeah.
And so very thankful that God did that. But then what happens, and this to me is just amazing. So it transforms these poisons that would kill us, and then all these other things, and sends them, again, the nutrients, the minerals, and all this, and it sends it out to our blood system, vitamins, proteins, all these other things. Now this is where it gets crazy. It sends all that out into the body's 60 trillion cells.
Wow.
Through, and I'm not making this up, it'll sound wrong at first, but I have fact checked this, and I think you did too.
Okay.
But it sends all of this out through the 75,000 miles of veins, arteries, and capillaries that are inside of our body.
That's hard to fathom.
It is. The Earth is about 25,000 miles around. So if you somehow stretched out all these veins, arteries, and capillaries within each of our bodies, they go around the Earth 3 times. Now you tell me how that just accidentally happened, Darin.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you because I know it didn't accidentally happen.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is just crazy.
So those are just a few things, and there's many, many more. And let me just quickly throw out this resource because Grant Jeffries has cataloged a lot of these things in one resource, which is kind of fun. So it actually is called Creation, Remarkable Evidence of God's Design by Grant Jeffrey, and that's a book. I've got it on Kindle, or you could get a hard copy or whatever. But it's just fun to see that all in one place.
Yeah, that is. I was just talking recently with a fellow that I was doing a get to know you meeting because
getting to know you.
To see about having him on our podcast. And he's a young apologist, and I was telling him what we were getting ready to talk about. And so he agreed to do just a quick interview because I told him you were going to be giving a lot of these positives.
Yeah.
on the human body. So him being an apologist, I asked him, I said, so what's the negatives when we talk about all this design and creation? And so I've got another clip here. His name is Than something. You'll see in the clip that I messed up his name, so I'm not even going to try it. He's Greek, or that's his heritage.
All right.
And he's going to be on our show hopefully in the future, but we have a quick...
the getting to know you Greek apologist Than something.
So yeah, we have a quick, because it kind of played into our show.
Right.
It worked out. So I'm going to play that. It's about 4 minutes long, and then on the end of that, we'll have our thoughts, and I'll give you your usual wrap it up, Joel.
All right, sounds like a plan.
So here's that clip. So I'm with Than Christopoulos. Is that right?
Christopoulos.
Oh,
It's okay.
man.
I don't blame you.
Oh, Joel's going to be laughing at that one because that's just the way I am.
Way to go, brother. He won't be back.
So we're doing a get to know you meeting here, brother. And I was telling you that Joe and I are getting ready to talk about the wonders of the human body in our next podcast, how intelligently designed we are. And Joe's covering just how amazing the human body is. And I know that there's skeptics and atheists that have some pushback. And so as an apologist, how would you respond to their pushbacks?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different pushbacks people will give to the intelligent design argument. And the most popular one that I get a lot is the assumption essentially that since our body isn't perfectly made, so to speak, therefore God doesn't exist. So as a philosopher, especially, I actually like to break down people's objections and arguments into philosophical arguments. So what I'll do is I'll break it down like such, and I'm going to break it down almost like what you would see premises, which are kind of statements that lead to a conclusion. So premise one could be something like, if a perfect God exists, then our bodies would reflect his perfect creation or something like that.
Sure.
Premise two could be something simple, again, like our design is not perfect, and therefore the conclusion there would be God does not exist. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with deductive arguments, that's what this is. If those two statements are true, the conclusion has to be true. But those two statements couldn't be further from the truth. Premise one could be something like, if God exists, our bodies would be perfect. But that's a total assumption. God's free to do whatever he wants. Think about a person that makes a car. You can make a rust bucket or you can make a McLaren. Obviously, the McLaren is going to be way better, but somebody still made that rust bucket. So it doesn't really logically follow that if our bodies aren't perfect, that God doesn't exist. The second premise too, our design is not perfect. Really, I'm going to change the word perfect with optimal. And the reason I say that is because our body's optimality is contingent upon what makes it up to be. So for what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of people will even say the human eye isn't optimally created because the blood vessels are in the back versus the front. And they'll think that because they're in the back, it's just more blood vessel than it's necessary. But in actuality, when you look at the human eye, the blood vessels come in the front. But the reason why is because the retina needs so much blood flow for us to actually achieve the visual acuity that we do. So there's so many bits and pieces that go together here, and we have to look at the assumptions made in the objections that skeptics will give us.
Yeah, and where does our sin nature come in? Because I would think that that's part of, if we're in a fallen world, we have no idea that maybe part of why we're maybe not, like you said, optimal, but not perfect. Would that have anything to do with the fall, possibly?
Oh, without a doubt. That's one thing I always bring up with people. I can't prove that the fall happened, but if God exists and Jesus rose from the dead, it's pretty easy to assume that the fall did happen.
Yes.
And we have no clue just how badly the fall affected all of creation. I'm often thinking, what other colors would we be seeing?
Yeah.
Stuff like that if it wasn't for the fall.
Yeah, who knows? That's good. Well, hey, brother, I appreciate that. And why don't you go ahead and give our audience your YouTube channel and anything else that you'd like for them to know about?
Yeah, of course. You guys can find me at Exploring Reality. So you can just type that into YouTube. There's somebody else with a YouTube channel that's actually Exploring Reality. So go down to the one that has less subscribers and you'll find me at Exploring Reality. And yeah.
Hey, that's great. You're building the followers and you've got a great channel, brother.
Thank you.
And I look forward. We're going to be doing some podcasting hopefully in the future. That's why we're even having this conversation. So look forward to that and appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was a great get to know you that I had with him, and I'm looking forward to getting him on our show. What'd you think of that, Joe?
I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, we're already using his name for a funny.
That's right. No, I thought it was great. I really appreciated that. The main thing that we need to rally around as believers is that we are designed by this incredible God. But all these things that we learn about God and how he's made us and how he's made our universe shouldn't only be mind-bending, but they should be knee-bending. They should cause us to worship and be amazed at God.
Absolutely. It's clear we're designed.
Yep.
All right, brother. Take us home.
All right. Well, I'd love to share a couple verses of Scripture from Psalm 139. It's one of my favorite Psalms, and perhaps for many listening. This is beginning in verse 13 of Psalm 139. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And so that is great encouragement to me, and I think to a lot of Christians, especially when things get maybe kind of difficult or we're in times like we are now, just to remember that God has in fact created us. He made us. He loves us, and we are not mistakes.
Amen, brother.
Amen, brother.
Amen, brother.
All right. Thanks, folks. See you next time.
She combs her hair as she looks in the mirror, prepares herself for the day ahead. To the well to get some water. You never know what a day will bring.
You've been listening to The Flaming Sword. Until next time, remember, love the sheep. Shoot the wolves.